This is Jeremy with Fundamental Tennis. Why is having the correct stance on your ground stroke so important? Well, it's going to help with your balance, alignment. It'll help you utilize your body better. It helps recovery and getting ready for the next shot. It'll help you with your accuracy, power, weight transfer, and most importantly, it will help lessen the chance of injury. What am I talking about with the stance? I'm talking about open stance, neutral stance, semi-open stance, and closed stance. How do you know what stance to use on your ground strokes? Stance means the alignment of your feet in relation to each other. I'm going to talk about the number one factor that determines what stance you should use, and we're going to talk briefly about how to do each stance. But before we go any further, make sure to click the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any valuable content that I will come out with in the future. So we've talked about how important having the correct stance is based on the situation and how important it is that you're doing that stance in the right way in terms of the loading, the weight transfer, and the unloading, and where your weight transfers to at the end, and making sure that you have good balance and a good wide base with the knees bent. Now, before we talk about when to use each of the four stances, because you should use each of the four depending on the situation, we're first going to talk about how to do each stance. I'm going to demonstrate for the forehand, the two-handed backhand, and then the one-handed backhand. And after that, we will talk about when to do each stance. If we envision a clock around our body anytime we hit a ball, we want to take a step with our left foot. If you're right-handed, demonstrating a forehand, take a step with your left foot towards 12 o'clock. So again, there's a big clock around you. We've got 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You want to step towards 12 o'clock when doing a neutral stance, whether it's a forehand or a backhand. So I'm going to demonstrate with a forehand first. I don't want any movement involved when you're practicing how to do these stances. So no points, no rallies. You're simply going to be near the depth of the service line. Drop a ball for yourself. We're just going to go over the basics here. You want your weight on your back foot or your right foot if you're a righty. You're going to drop the ball for yourself, swing to the ball, and then you're going to finish with your weight forward on your left foot. And notice I've stepped to 12 o'clock. It's important that you're going to 12 o'clock with that left leg step. One more time, forehand. I'm right-handed. I take a step with my left foot towards 12 o'clock. And I simply transfer my weight to the front foot. I think it's great to hold the finish to check to see if you have stepped to 12 o'clock. Notice how I roll up on my back toe of my right foot. That shows that I've transferred my weight forward. So now I'm going to demonstrate the neutral stance with the two-handed backhand as well as the one-handed backhand. Two-handed backhand first. I have my weight on my left foot. Now you're going to want to toss the ball up as opposed to simply dropping the ball so you have time to put that top hand on the grip. So I toss the ball up and hit step. Notice how my foot is pointing to 12 o'clock and I've taken my step towards 12 o'clock. One more time for the two-hander. Load on the left foot and transfer the weight. Finish with the weight on the right foot, 12 o'clock. One more time. Let's do the one-handed backhand this time. Toss the ball up. Notice I've stepped towards 12 o'clock. Not stepping at 12 o'clock would be over here or maybe this way. We don't want that if you're trying to do a neutral stance. One last time. Load the weight on the back foot. Transfer the weight to the front foot. I hold the finish, ensure that my toes are pointing to 12 o'clock, and then I have taken my step of my right foot as a righty on the backhand side towards 12 o'clock as well. So that's it for the neutral stance. Stepping to 12 o'clock, whether it's a forehand or a backhand. Now we're going to talk about the semi-open stance. I'm going to show you the forehand first. The left foot of a righty on the forehand is going to step towards 10 o'clock now, instead of, for the neutral stance, it was 12 o'clock. So I'm going to put my right foot on this white line here as a reference. And notice my left foot, instead of stepping towards 12 for neutral stance, now steps towards about 10 o'clock. Okay? So from here, you're going to drop the ball First, before you drop it, notice my weight is on my right foot, okay? That's a constant for all these stances on the forehand side. As a righty, you load on the right foot. And then at the end of the swing, I transfer my weight to the left foot. I hold the finish, all right? So you're already starting with your feet at that 10 o'clock position, or that left foot towards 10 o'clock. One more time. There's the semi-open stance. So here, swing, and then I unload, finishing with the weight on the left foot. Now, for the two-handed backhand, you'll see my left foot on the white line here. Again, I'm using this white line as a reference. The right foot is going to step towards 2 o'clock. So I toss the ball up, weight on the left, and then I finish with my weight, on the right foot. One more time at the two-hander. Left foot on the white line. Right foot is going to be towards 2 o'clock. I'm a righty hitting a two-handed backhand. And then I finish with my weight on the right foot. One-handed backhand, load with the weight on the left foot. And then I finish with my weight on the right foot. One last time here. And notice how the heel of my right foot is up a little bit. That's showing how I'm loading all my weight, or most of my weight, on my back foot, which is my left foot on the backhand. So here, oops, not a good toss. I'll try that again. Left, right. So you start with the weight on the left, finish with the weight on the right foot. So in the forehand as a righty, you step towards 10 o'clock. Backhand as a righty, you step towards 2 o'clock. And the same goes, load on the back foot and finish with your weight on the front foot. The open stance now, this is not to get confused with the semi-open stance. In the open stance, I'm going to demonstrate forehand first again. Use this service line as a reference. Your right foot is going to be on the service line, and your left foot is also going to be on the service line. So your left foot is not in front of the right foot, closer to the net, like the previous two stances were. Your feet are in the same depth or distance from the net. So from here, again, you're going to drop the ball for yourself. There's that weight starting on the right foot. My left foot, the heel is up, showing that the weight is mainly on my right foot. So from here, I drop the ball, contact, hold the finish. I check to make sure I still got balance, my feet are aligned, I'm not moving my feet all over the place. Drop, hit, here we go. Let's demonstrate for the two-handed backhand now. Weights on the left foot, contact, and then I finish with my weights on the right foot. Now I'll demonstrate for a one-handed backhand. Weight on the left foot, contact. Last stance I call the closed stance. This is going to be used only on the backhand side. This should not be used on the forehand side, especially is popular for the one-handed backhand players out there. Now if we use the center line as a reference, and I put my left foot on where the center line and service line meet, if I step on the white line, I'm stepping to 12 o'clock. That's, of course, a neutral stance. So the white line is 12 o'clock. When doing a closed stance backhand, your right foot, as a righty, is going to step towards 10 or 11 o'clock. So you're stepping across like so. Again, this is only for the backhand. So I'm going to demonstrate one two-handed backhand and then a couple one-handed backhands. So I step across. Okay, now notice how I look a little bit awkward and twisted up. You should, especially on a two-handed backhand, bring your back foot off the ground after you've finished your extension out to the target, so that when you finish, you square up like this. This is so that you rotate your hips, so that you maintain balance, and so that you have variety in where you can control the direction of the ball. Let me show you one last time with the two-handed backhand, actually, so you can see. So I'm stepping towards 2 o'clock. Towards 10 o'clock. And then I finish squared up with the feet wide apart and the feet right next to each other, but wide apart, if that makes sense. So I'm going to demonstrate the one-handed backhand now. I'm going to step towards 10 o'clock, and then I finish. After I finish the swing, I square up at the end. Let me show you one more on the one-handed backhand here. I step across, and then I square up. That's so that I can start my recovery and get ready for the next ball. So real quick, we're going to demonstrate here with the forehand. White line is 12 o'clock. We talked about neutral stance is here at 12 o'clock. Closed stance, that's the backhand only side. I'm stepping towards 10 o'clock. Let's go back to the forehand. This is semi-open stance, so I'm stepping towards 10 o'clock here. And then we've got fully open stance, which the left foot is going to be pointing towards 9 o'clock if you're doing a forehand as a righty. So those are the stances. Now let's talk about how do we know which stance to use, because again, you've got to use each one of them. You've got to know how to choose which one, and eventually you're going to be able to do this without even thinking about it. Now that you have a taste of how to do each of the 4 common stances, I want to talk about how to know which of the 4 stances you should use based on the situation that you're in. Which stance you should use from the back of the court near the baseline, so forehand, backhand, ground strokes, is a highly debated topic among tennis coaches around the world. Now, the truth is, it's not about what stance is the best to use, it's about which stance is the best to use depending on the situation you're in. What I mean by that is the number one factor that determines which stance you should use is the ball that you are receiving. The ball you receive is going to dictate which stance that you use. And last time I checked, you are not going to receive the same ball every time. So you need to be able to have the neutral stance, the closed stance, the semi-open, and the open stance. First stance we're going to do right now is the neutral stance. How do you know when to use neutral stance? When the ball is short, so you have to move forward to hit it, you're going to use neutral stance. The only exception would be if it's a high short ball. Now, the time we're also going to use a neutral stance is when the ball is low. So a low ball and a short ball is when you use a neutral stance. Remember, neutral stance is when you step towards 12 o'clock. When using a neutral stance, you're going to use it typically in the middle third of the singles court. So I'm going to receive a ball, and I want you to look at the ball I receive because this is the kind of ball you're going to use a neutral stance on. So the ball is not far away. It's not a high ball. The ball is no higher than about my waist. And I'm simply going to step towards 12 o'clock. Okay? Let me show you a demonstration on the forehand. Okay? So it's a slightly short ball. You can see I'm moving forward. I want to step in towards my target. Okay? I almost forgot about you one-handers out there. Let me show you the one-handed backhand in which you're stepping forward. Again, it's a low ball. It's going to be below your waist approximately, and it's often also going to be a short ball. Definitely a short ball you're going to have to step in on. Again, besides a high short ball. So check this out. One-handed backhand. Stepping towards, ooh, that wasn't a good one. Stepping towards 12 o'clock. All right, one more time. That is it for the neutral stance. So if the ball is low, you're going to step in, okay? Unless it's like 90 miles an hour. That is going to be an open stance, which is the next stance we're going to talk about. Once again, neutral stance when the ball is short and or the ball is low. Now I'm going to show you the open stance. This is not the semi-open stance. The open stance is when the feet are next to each other as opposed to one foot being in front of the other foot. The open stance is going to be used when you are receiving a very fast ball and you're pressed for time. You can hit a fully open stance anywhere on the court, although it's certainly most common to be hit in this area near the alley. Okay, so the outside thirds of the court is where the open stance is used most often, because if you're sprinting that way to get a ball, you're probably pressed for time. Although if there's a bullet coming straight down the center of the court, you don't have time, you do the open stance. The reason you do the open stance when you don't have time is if you don't have time to step forward towards your target, then you should not be stepping forward. You're going to use that open stance. So check out how I'm really pressed for time. I do the open stance. The open stance also helps me with recovering quickly and my balance. Now, if I were to use a closed stance, this is very common. This is a big problem. We don't want to use a closed stance on this particular ball. I'm going to be off balance. It's bad for the hip, and then I'm going to recover to the middle much slower. So check this out. I'm pressed for time. So I got my open stance. Whoa, mama. I'm not that fast. I'm pressed for time. So I've got my open stance. Okay? I don't have time to step in because if I do, look how awkward that looks. One more time, open stance. All right? And that is the open stance. Again, use when you don't have time. That's the only time you should be using the open stance. You're pressed for time. You're typically running wide. Use that open stance so you get back to the middle quicker. Here is a high, deep ball, as you can see here. When receiving a ball like this, you're going to use a semi-open stance. Anytime you have a high contact shot, semi-open stance is best. So watch here as I do a forehand semi-open stance. I'm receiving that high, deep ball, and I'm elevating off the ground actually to allow myself to not have too high of a contact. You'll notice how I'm pushing off of my right foot. I'm actually raising the knee of my left leg for balance and alignment. Now take a look at the open stance, or I should say semi-open stance backhand. I'm getting pushed back by a high deep ball. It's a contact around shoulder level once again. So semi-open stance is the way to go. So once again, a high contact between chest and head level is going to be the time to use the semi-open stance. So in just a second, you're going to see the one-handed backhand semi-open stance. Definitely more common than a fully open stance one-handed backhand. You'll see Dominic Thiem doing that a lot. I saw him do it just today against Djokovic. Right here, semi-open stance. I elevate to create a little better strike zone. If I don't get off the ground here, I'm going to be hitting that ball way too high above my strike zone. This is the semi-open stance. Now the closed stance. The closed stance is going to be used on only the backhand, right? And that's going to be, as a righty, your right foot is going to step towards 10 or preferably 11 o'clock. Now, the closed stance backhand is used not when the ball comes down the middle of the court right to you, because that would be a neutral stance. And the closed stance is also not used when you're pulled way wide near the alley and you're really on defense, a bit of an emergency shot, because that would be open stance. So it's kind of in between. The closed stance is going to be used when you're pressed for time a little bit, but not a lot. Now, typically the closed stance is going to be used in this area here, so about halfway between the alley and the center of the court. Now, the closed stance can be used anywhere from that same spot, halfway between the alley and the center of the court, all the way to about the alley if you have a one-handed backhand. So the range of acceptability to use a closed stance on a one-handed backhand is much wider distance on the court in which it's acceptable to use a closed stance. That is because of a few reasons, but one is doing an open stance one-handed backhand is quite difficult. So it's more acceptable to use a closed stance. Also, in the one-hander, you're going to stay much more sideways and you're going to stay sideways longer. So closed stance is used when you're pulled wide, but not wide enough to where you're so pressed on time where you have to use an open stance. So the closed stance is also going to be a ball that's about mid-height to low-level height. So it could be a knee-height ball, or it might even be close to chest height. So closed stance ball, as you'll see here. So I'm going to step a little bit across. And one more time, step a little bit across. As you can see, you're only as good as your stance. Your stance plays a big part in the foundation of your ground strokes. Now, for a quick summary, there's two things about the ball that you're receiving that determine your stance. Number one is the time or the space that you have to cover. And number two is the height of the contact. Are you hitting it more at your waist height or more close to the shoulder height? Once again, this is Jeremy with Fundamental Tennis. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a like, subscribe, hit that bell, tell everybody you know. Let me know what you think of the video. I'd love to hear some questions. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in next week's video.